Existential OCD is sort of like having an existential crisis, but on steroids. For many people, the questions that arise from existential OCD come out of nowhere. For me, at least, it was that way. I started asking these existential questions without having really thought about them before. So when they arise for the first time, it's sort of as if you only saw the world in a black or white manner, and now you understand that there are a lot of these different gradations to it. And so part of the experience of existential OCD is that you believe that you have broken your brain, that there's this virus that just crept into your mind, and now you are stuck in all of these questions that have no answer. And most of all, you have this big feeling within you that these questions that you are asking are not valid, that these questions that you are asking are dangerous, that they cannot be asked, and that once you go on that road, you can't go back. And so I believe that is one of the reasons why existential OCD or an existential crisis overall feels so frightening, is because you are going into uncharted territory, that the map that you were carrying before has no directions towards where you're actually at now. Part of what triggers the overthinking response and rumination in existential OCD, or even during an existential crisis that can mimic OCD, is the avoidance behavior, that you are trying to avoid some content in your mind, you're trying to avoid some sort of trauma, some sensation or feeling that is deeply unpleasant and that you believe that you cannot accept fully. And so your mind just starts thinking in these circles and loops as an attempt to create enough pollution so that you cannot see the actual contents of the things that are bothering you. And so I believe that with existential OCD and with any existential question of that matter, I believe something that is very useful is just to really try to understand what emotions are associated with a certain question. And also trying to understand that a certain question, a certain insight isn't necessarily fully related to the emotion that you are feeling, that there is some freedom towards what association you can attach to a certain situation, to a certain idea. So, for example, in my case, the question of what is reality, when it first came up, it was extremely overwhelming, and at times it still is. But I've had moments in my life where asking that same question has been a source of happiness and wonder, because it truly is a very interesting question. It can seem frightening because it may take you on a road that goes against many of your inbuilt assumptions. But to a greater extent, it is a question that many people have taken in and seen it as a source of exploration, a source of their own curiosity. And so what I believe that should always be done is when you're feeling afraid towards something, just ask yourself, how can I be curious about this? How can I take this in? Sort of like when you're watching a sci-fi movie. You enjoy a movie because it has some mysterious content, because if you knew how the movie would end, then that would sort of take away from the value that you associate to that movie. And so life is sort of the same. The difference here is that you're not seeing the movie on the screen, you're not detached from it, you're actually a player in it. And so, just realizing that we are also novelty-seeking creatures, and that there is an aspect of these questions that is not just buried in fear, that there is some sort of wonder that you can take from it, is something that should be done. Another thing that perpetuates existential crisis and OCD is the idea that you need to have an answer for every question that comes up. And also the idea that, like I said before, that these questions are not valid. And so part of the recovery process is realizing that you do not need to have answers, that most of the times you cannot have answers at all, and just understanding that that is perfectly okay. We live in a society where we believe that everyone has certainty, that certainty is needed. We live in a society where most people are afraid or actually reject adopting any stance of skepticism. People, even when they are found to be wrong around a certain matter, they hardly acknowledge that. And so just understanding that a posture that we should have in life that is extremely conducive to recovery in any sort of these questions is the idea that it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to not know, it's okay for things to suck. And so just taking that into consideration is one of the paths to recovery, because part of the anxiety also comes towards the expectations that you have towards your own mental well-being. And so one of the things that also brings anxiety is our constant need to predict how we will feel in the next moment. And so sometimes just saying to yourself that I will be anxious in the next moment, or I will be anxious if X event happens. If you just repeat that phrase, you will see that part of the anticipatory anxiety might go away. So hopefully, I just wanted to do this short video to just narrow in a little bit more on the theme of existential OCD and existential crisis. So let me know if you found this to be a helpful video. Thank you.